a great day to have our Senior Advisor for Foreign Policy and National Security join us because he was the acting director of national intelligence. And when we talk about the Hunter Biden letter, again, with those 51 former intel officials, there were a lot of people with that kind of title on there. There were former CIA directors, 2 of them right at the top. And we know that Secretary Blinken was leading the charge for the letter. He's not on it because he was the campaign staffer or campaign associate, even though he says he's above politics. He was the campaign associate who was putting the letter together. And Mike Morrell said the only reason he even asked people like Brennan to sign the letter, or he himself put together this signing campaign, was because Tony Blinken asked him to. And in the letter it says, in the email to John Brennan, I just want to say it one more time, this is the same day the letter goes out. So it's not like these guys did any research or work before they put their names on it. He just says, we're trying to give the campaign, particularly during the debate on Thursday, a talking point to push back on Trump on this issue. And then John Brennan, 18 minutes later, no questions. Okay, Mike, add my name to the list. Good initiative. Thanks for asking me to sign on. I mean, Rick, when we talk about election interference, this is about as real as election interference gets. When you have former CIA directors putting together a letter, they don't even know if it's true or not. They don't even ask if it's true or not. They might even know it's false, to impact a presidential debate.
I thought it was pretty shameful that not a single one came forward and said, hey, can we see some of the intelligence that you have on this? No one asked for a briefing. No one asked for any information. These people just immediately became political. And when you combine the Russian collusion and the Steele dossier, I got to say, we have to have a total revamping of the CIA and intelligence agencies' leadership. These people are way too political. They've politicized intelligence. Then they blame the other side. They have been leaking to Congress, to partisans in Congress, who then manipulate. And let's just remember, they leaked this innuendo campaign to the Washington Post, who first ran an article suggesting, the agencies are now looking at the laptop to see if it's Russian disinformation. They leak that to the Post. The Post dutifully prints it. And then they use that to say, look at this. There's a whole bunch of smoke here. There must be fire. Sign this letter. The last point I think that I'd like to raise when you look at this email is that they say they're working on Dan Coats. Why are they thinking that Dan Coats is going to sign a letter that is completely political, Dan Coats being a Republican? I think that we need to go and figure out who was working against President Trump, because this is honestly, you have to ask yourself, why is it that every single day they're coming at Donald Trump? Every single day, reporters and political people.
Rick, I said this in the last segment of the broadcast. I don't know if you were able to catch any of it, but this is what I said. I said, people need to understand, our listeners, our members, the ACLJ members, people listening to these broadcasts or watching on social media, you understand this took place, this letter and this disinformation and this going to the FBI, going to these social media companies under Donald Trump's watch. In other words, they did this while Trump was president. That's what's got me so concerned.
It's so outrageous, but it just goes to show that the intelligence agencies are filled with partisans. And by the way, this is not a controversial statement. I know a lot of intelligence officials, career intelligence officials, who are not partisan, who work every day to make America safe, and they're not interested in playing a partisan game because they're interested in keeping America safe. There are a lot of people, the majority of people are working hard for our country, but they know who the partisans are. Everybody knows who's leaking. Everybody knows who is trying to, push an agenda. I mean, on that list, too, was Sue Gordon. Remember, Sue Gordon is the one who was complaining that she wasn't getting a big job in the Trump administration. And here we see she's part of the group that is working against Donald Trump politically. So it's the same people who promote these career intelligence officials or career officials in the media because they say, oh, these people are above reproach and they're just working for the country. Meanwhile, we're catching them working against the Republican.
Yeah, I mean, as we pointed out, I mean, this is happening while President Trump is president. They're even talking about going to Republicans. But I want to play the sound from Blinken again because I just want to because it's just unbelievable that he sits down with Fox News and says and just lies to him. And this is after he's gone through all this confirmation process, saying he had nothing to do with any of this. And then he gets asked directly on Fox. He does it again. Take a listen.
Can you explain what your role was in that and if you incentivized it?
Well, first, one of the great benefits of this job is that I don't do politics and don't engage in it. But with regard to that letter, I didn't wasn't my idea. Didn't ask for it. Didn't solicit it. And I think the testimony that the former Deputy Director of the CIA, Mike Morrell, put forward confirms that.
What we know, Rick, is that he didn't send the email to Brennan. He had Mike Morrell solicit it. But he did go to Mike Morrell, the former CIA director, and ask him to do it. I mean, so Mike Morrell has testified under oath to Congress that he wouldn't have even asked. He wouldn't even written this letter. He wouldn't have come up with this idea unless Tony Blinken called him.
Look, I see it very clearly. Tony Blinken called him from the campaign and said, we saw this Washington Post story, and he clutched his pearls and was saying, oh my gosh, I can't believe this could be Russian disinformation. Maybe he didn't say get together 51 people and write a letter, but he certainly presented the political opportunity to Mike Morrell, who immediately clear-eyed got the message from Antony Blinken and went out and did politics. Let me just also add, for the Secretary of State to say that he doesn't do politics is a farce. He has embassies around the world where every single embassy has a division within the embassy called the political division. The political officers are how they're named. Of course they do politics. What Antony Blinken should have said is, I'm not doing partisan politics. He didn't say that. He immediately just said, oh, I don't do politics. Maybe that's the problem with Antony Blinken. The world is working on politics, the politics of war, the politics of water, the politics of a whole bunch of issues. And Antony Blinken doesn't realize he's supposed to be doing politics.
Rick, I'm holding in my hand our federal lawsuit that we filed, our FOIA case that we did the demand. They didn't, of course, respond. We went to federal court. Got to file a status report, by the way, in the middle of June. American Center for Law and Justice versus the Federal Bureau of Investigation in the United States District Court for the District of Columbia. What I think it'd be good for people to hear from you, because you were inside government. You were the member of the cabinet, director of national intelligence. You also have been an ambassador to a G7 country, Germany. But from the intelligence standpoint, how important is it? Because what I'm telling people is the way we're going to find out who's behind all this, and then you work with Congress to hold these people accountable, is to get the data. Without the information, you could talk about it, but you got to take action here, which is precisely what we're doing.
Look, I think it's clear that what we have to be able to do is get the intelligence agencies to say that not a single one of these 51 people had any piece of intelligence or had a briefing. None of them ever had a briefing suggesting that Hunter Biden's laptop was Russian disinformation. They made it up. They did it for politics, partisan politics reasons. And so we need Avril Haines, who is the director of national intelligence, to come out and protect the intelligence agencies from this partisan manipulation. Right now, the intelligence agencies are taking a huge hit because leaders of the intelligence agencies are caught red-handed making partisan politics during an election season, 3 weeks before an election. They're making it a part of the intelligence agencies. If Avril Haines doesn't come out and distance herself and make clear that these 51 people acted without any raw intelligence or intelligence briefings, then she is damaging the intelligence agencies.
All right, Rick, we appreciate it as always. Appreciate your insights. Glad you're part of our team.